Namaskar, Nilesh Oak with another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. This would be session number 37. The question that I'm trying to answer is, what is it that finally allowed me to nail down the specific year 5561 BC for the year of Mahabharata war? And this is in the context of work of great Dr. P.V. Vartak, Padmakar Vishnu Vartak. All right, so let's begin with the question that I received from, let's call him AKK. Okay, he is indeed have a good knowledge of astronomy, of Mahabharata, and of many other subjects. I will just not talk much about him because that brings up his identity and what different organizations he might have worked for, which is not relevant to this discussion. So he wrote, "Dear Dr. Oak, Dr. No, Namaste. I was wondering, how did you get the year 5561 BCE after going through multiple steps which narrowed down the probable year of the war to a window?" So which is to say, from a window, like after I had narrowed it down to a window of time, from that point, how did I arrive at 5561 BCE? Then he continues, was it calculated using Nakshatra Chakra plus months algorithm, or something of that effect, or you adopted the year from Dr. Vartak as often explained by him in his book? Or his point is, was it through some Nakshatra Chakra and months algorithm and Mahabharata evidence and somehow putting together as a jigsaw puzzle, trying to solve it? Or was it purely based on essentially adopting or borrowing the date of Dr. Vartak, okay, as explained in his book? I would encourage everyone to read Dr. Vartak's books. I will show you the picture. In Marathi, he wrote it as early as 1970s, 71, which is what now? 52, 52 years ago. Around that, like 50 years ago. You should read it. I don't have that book handy. In fact, I have 2 copies of that book with me. Okay. And I must have read that book 50 to 100 times. No exaggeration. So I don't have it handy here. All right. But I'll show you the picture. It's also been, when he wrote it in Marathi. It is also been translated in English. So those of you who cannot read Marathi, then you can read it in English. All right. So what is the answer? Well, let's get into it. Quickly, this is the cover of his book, a Marathi book, Swayambhu. He wrote a book. In fact, this is a fascinating book, very compact. One reading this is not meant to be read once. This is meant to be read 20 plus times at least. That is also true about all my books. Okay, all 3 of my books, it is true. It's not meant to be read once. That will not do justice. It's not good for you. It's not good for the content of the book. Okay, many times people will read something and they will start talking about it, the content of it, which does not make sense. When I listen to it, I said, what are they talking? Did they read my book or some other books? Same thing will apply to Swayambhu. Okay, so Dr. P.V. Vartak proposed an approximate time period around 5480 BCE in 71, and I cannot tell you the exact date, but by 1980, so around 1980, before 1980, he had arrived at 5561 BCE. Now, that could be the reason why AKK is possibly asking the question. So many people will say, okay, so Dr. P.V. Vartak did this in 1980, 5561 BCE. And so, Nilesh, what are you doing? I mean, you are talking about taking some shlok from Mahabharata, trying to solve the mystery behind it for 15 years, from 1995 to 2009. And then you did something for 2 years, publish your first book, then took 9 years and publish your third book on Bhishma Nirvana, which is related to Mahabharata. And what is your conclusion? Oh, the Mahabharata war happened in 5561 BCE. Now, how is that different than what Dr. P.V. Vartak is saying? And this is a very legitimate question. Okay, it's a very important question. It must be asked. It must be asked multiple times. In fact, we should never stop asking that question. It is that important. Okay, quickly, just to those of you who may not be aware of Dr. P.V. Vartak, if that's the case, actually, it's very unfortunate, because if you consider the research of Indian civilization, not just antiquity, now what he has done on purely on the antiquity is just beyond amazing, but different aspects, different facets of Hindu civilization, different facets of Indian civilization, what he has done is amazing. I have practically all of his books. They would number 20 or so. I don't know the exact number. I have all of them. I would encourage all of you, especially those who can read Marathi, to read all of his books. A good number of his books have been translated in other languages, English for sure. I know that not all of his books have been translated. Definitely consider reading those. You'll be fascinated. You'll be amazed. Okay. No, I cannot think of many names. In fact, I struggle to come up with 1, 2, and 3 in the breadth, but in the depth, in the intellect, in the imagination, ingenuity, in terms of using the tantra yukti to solve the problem, to remove the samshaya. I mean, his work is unparalleled. Extremely empirical, extremely yogic type of experiments, extremely knowledgeable person. He was a medical doctor by profession. And so just amazing. I was fortunate to meet him multiple times. Like, I'm sharing 2 pictures, one at the top, possibly going back to 10 plus years. The other one would be less than 10 years, but still my guess is like, I can't exactly pinpoint now, but maybe 7 plus years or something like this with my wife, Ashwini. Then he passed away around 2018 or so. Okay, I don't have the exact year in my mind. And anyways, just an amazing individual, has written tremendous work. Okay, you would have to read each one of his book, even when he's not talking about antiquity, even when there are no mathematical calculations involved. Even a simple book, by simple I mean it's just a plain narration about Bhagwan Krishna or Draupadi, you will have to reread multiple times. Okay, so the first book he wrote is Swayambhu, that Swayambhu referring to Bhima as the hero, Purushottama as the hero of the Mahabharata war. Okay, now in this book itself, he put all of his work related to the dating of Mahabharata. So if he said 5561 BCE, I am saying 5561 BCE. He did this in 1970s and 1980s. Why I am talking about the same thing, claiming 5561 BCE, and as if it appears like I'm patting my back and saying, oh, what a fascinating work I have done. Guys, do you understand it? Well, we will just take a small snippet of that discussion, and I will share that with you in the context of the question that AKK asked. Okay, so how did I arrive at 5561 BC? Was it based on a narrow bracket? And of course, I need to explain how I arrived at the narrow bracket. And is there only one narrow bracket, time bracket? Actually, the answer is no. There are multiple time brackets that you arrive at depending on different pieces of evidence from the Mahabharata text. And of course, then the most important question, did I arrive at 5561 BCE, or how did I arrive at 5561 BCE? And if I have done this, 80, let's say, 1980 is when Dr. P.V. Vartak did it. So 90, 2000, 2010. So about 30 years after, because I published my book in 2011. So after 30 years after Dr. Padmakar Vishnu Vartak said the Mahabharata war happened in 5561 BCE, what am I doing? Am I mad? Saying something 30 years after, saying, hey, 5561 BC is the year of Mahabharata war. This is my discovery and original research. What's going on? And so therefore I said what AKK is asking is a very legitimate question. And this question I wish and I hope people keep on asking. All right. So let's get into the details of it. Now, some people, because of what I just discussed, they will say, okay, hold on. So like, what did you do different? And I said, you know what, because the context is between the work of Dr. P.V. Vartak and my work, separated by about 30 years or so, it is better that I say this I bring it out to everyone's attention in the words of Dr. P.V. Vartak, okay, who wrote Swayambhu, Vastav Ramayana, and as I said, many other books. For example, Swayambhu and Vastav Ramayana. Okay, Vastav Ramayana is about the lot of aspects of Ramayana, but Valmiki Ramayana, but also dating of Ramayana. And his dating and my dating does not agree. Okay, I want you to pay attention. And in spite of it, despite, or I would say because of it, very much because of it, I encourage all of you to grab a copy of Vastav Ramayana, which is written in Marathi, and its translation also exists in English. I also have that book, not handy here. Read it. And as the rule goes now, read it multiple times. It is that fascinating, Vastav Ramayana. All right. So I want you to understand what's going on, especially with the original researchers, when someone like me critiques or criticizes another claim. It's not about that person. It is about showing the errors, the mistakes, okay, the blunders, the disasters of that claim. And I want others to do exactly the same thing about my research. Unfortunately, what happens, and that happened to Dr. P.V. Vartak also, if time permits, and it won't be today, of course, in future, maybe 5-10 years from now, because there is so much to cover in between, I will talk about some of the utterly ridiculous, utterly stupid arguments that were made against the work of Dr. P.V. Vartak. Again, when I say utterly stupid, utterly idiotic, am I talking about the individual who made that argument? Well, sometime I will mention that person's name because for context it's required. If it's not required, I don't mention the name because it's not about who made that argument, but for our journey of a jnana yoga, we need to understand what argument is stupid, why it is stupid, why it is idiotic. Okay. Therefore, Nyaya Darshana talks about jalpa, vitanda, hetvabhasa, chala, jati, nigrasthana. These are the things to avoid, but Nyaya Darshan says unless you are expert in these 6 things also, in addition to the previous 10. Okay, so it's like a pramana, and just a list is long. Samshaya, Drishtanta, Siddhanta, Avayava, Tirka, Avayava, Tarka, Nirnaya, Vada. There are these things we must understand, but we should also understand these 6 things. Why? So that we don't do it ourselves. Jalpa, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, Nigrasthana. Okay, so that's why I would, if I get time, and I'm very realistically saying it would be 10 years before possibly I can get to this. There is so much material to cover before that. But what does Dr. P.V. Vartak has to say? This is now going back to say 2009, 2011, right? So he says, you have done a great job. I requested astronomers to consider if Arundhati had gone ahead of Vasishta in 1971, which is when he wrote that Swayambhu book the very first time, the first edition. Since then, that book has seen many editions, multiple editions, okay? And Dr. P.V. Vartak is now, he passed away, but as a researcher of a original tribe. Not many fall into this category, okay? As it relates to the Mahabharata dating research, I can count all of them on the fingers of my one hand. Okay. So when I published Swayambhu, so he had published in 1971, but he said, but nobody cared. You are the first to do the great job. And again, I have done as detailed as a book permits, one full chapter dedicated to the work of Dr. P. V. Vartak on the dating of Mahabharata, which is 5561 BCE, and critiquing it, showing the errors, what possibly he made those errors, and so on and so forth. And also, of course, praising all the great work that he has done. So therefore, if you are in India, then you should go to Subbu Publications. You see the logo there. Okay, these days it's not like, oh, where do I find the link? Okay, if you're asking, guys, I'll tell you. Guess what? No matter, I mean, I don't think if you are really sincere, but if you are, I don't know if you still should read this book. Okay, because if you are really struggling, like somebody says Subbu Publications, and you say, oh, but where is the link? No, you are utterly lazy. Okay, like just go to Twitter, go to Google, go to Facebook. If you are listening to my talks, like in the links of this YouTube talk, in the descriptions, I mean, there has to be that very basic curiosity. If you are listening to someone and if you liked it, or if you read some book or you heard about something, it raises your curiosity to find more about it. Don't take time of very few people who are working for the renaissance of Hindu civilization, of a Hindutva, of a Hinduism. Okay, then you are wasting time. Okay, you will be, depending on which platform you try to approach, you will be muted, you will be blocked, and so on and so forth. Okay, avoid the tamas, avoid the laziness. I will never get tired of saying this, because in spite of me saying this, every time I see this in the comments, the way the people ask the comments and so on. The other one is, like, say, for example, AKK asked this beautiful question here. Okay, the question is clear. The very fact he's asking, the way he's asking, it tells me that he has studied Dr. P.V. Vartak, or at least there is a decent awareness of it and a very specific context, as opposed to somebody asking a question, oh yeah, please answer my question on Samudra Manthan. What does that mean? What is your question? And have you done anything on Samudra Manthan? The Samshaya, there is a word Vimarsha. The Samshaya should originate out of Vimarsha, out of your own synthesis, own analysis, own discussion, not like casually and carelessly in a very utterly stupid fashion asking some questions. Okay, back to this. So what does Dr. P.V. Vartak has to say about my work? And this is just, he is referring to very important, but one small aspect of my research. In fact, one of the 300 plus references from the Mahabharata text, specifically Arundhati Vasishta. So where did my journey begin? So now I'm trying to answer AKK, he's like saying, okay, so how did I narrow it down from a certain time bracket to a specific year of 5561 BCE? But just one step before that, how did I arrive at the time bracket? As I said, actually, I arrived at multiple time brackets. And today I will just share one with you. Okay. But just like the Arundhati Vasishta gave me one time bracket, Bhishma Nirvana gave me another time bracket. And there are actually additional references. For example, when you take that Bhishma Nirvana evidence of the simple fact, it's a simple fact, but I'm telling you, to the best of my knowledge, right now, I know only two individuals besides me. Well, I shouldn't say that. Now, someone like Rupa Bhattiji, of course, knows it. Someone like Jeevan Rao understands it. And many of the folks who are doing research, original research in a Indic space, who may not be specifically working on Mahabharata, also understand it. So I shouldn't limit in that way. But let me refine my statement, saying, if I have to count the number of people who actually have their claim, either original claim or a claim borrowed from someone, which they are defending it today, saying this is the correct number, correct year for the Mahabharata war, out of, so whatever those people, 130 plus individuals in principle, I would say only one other individual who has at least shown awareness of this Bhishma's duration on the bed of arrows to be different than 58 is just one individual, that is Vedavirarya ji. And even he, for some reason, which is beyond my comprehension, is stuck in 88 days. There is nothing in the Mahabharata text that will take you to 88 days. It will take you to a minimum of 92 or 95 days. So we'll go with the 95, minimum of 95 days. There is no question of 88. By the way, once he arrived at 88, so I'm just giving him some credit because at least he got out of the dogma of a 58, which is 58 days as a duration of Bhishma on the bed of arrows, which is utterly foolish. Anyone claiming Bhishma on the bed of arrows for 58 days, you can take it for granted the person has not bothered to read the Mahabharata text, period. No ifs, no buts. Has not bothered to read the Mahabharata text. So therefore, I'm giving some credit. At least there is a one individual out of all the Mahabharata dating researchers, who at least moved away from that 58. But then he got stuck into his own dogma of 88. And even there are worse things after that. After that 88, which itself is wrong, by the way, but then he cannot show 88 days for here. He has proposed 3162 BCE. Let me tell you something else. There is not even a single reference, single piece of evidence, not just astronomy or non-astronomy, in the entire Mahabharata text that will allow anyone to arrive at anywhere between 4000 BCE to 2000 BCE, which is to say what? Mahabharata evidence, any piece individually or all of it or some of it together, decisively falsifies any claim that is made between 4000 BC to 2000 BC. This is not a short interval. This is an interval of 2000 years. I'm saying not even a single piece of evidence can do that. Now, when I make this claim, it's a very strong assertion. And some of you, those of you who are following and have some basic sense of scientific acumen, logical reasoning, empirical testing, should say, first thing, this is a very tall claim that I'm making. And guess what? It should be so easy. Like Mahabharata has so much evidence. Just pull the evidence and show it to Nilesh. Okay, saying, what are you talking? Look, take this evidence. These are the calculations. This is how you can arrive at anywhere between 4000 BC to 2000 BC. Not even a single person has dared do that to this day. Now, they have different claims, but the claims are like, guys, I'm saying it, just trust me and believe it. That's the kind of utterly pathetic thing that's going on in this space of dating of the Mahabharata. So how do you begin? So I'll tell you where my journey began in establishing that first interval, which is this Arundhati Vasishtha observation. This is a process of science, or this is a process, and essentially Nyaya Darshana. Okay, this is known as a Avayava. Okay, it's a 5-step avayava. There are 5 avayavas described, but also you will see 10 avayavas described. You can expand things and you can contract things, summarize things. That's why even in our Darshana-Shastra, sometimes say Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, you will see what? Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramanani. And done. If you come to Nyaya Darshana, what will it say? Pratyaksha Anumana Upamana Shabda Pramanani. Are they saying 2 different things? Not really. There is a subtle difference depending on their goal, depending on their target. Okay. For example, if you are doing, when we talk of empirical, so objective science, empirical experiments, okay. Well, if you are doing experiment in physics versus chemistry versus biology, they are still empirical experiments, but the nature would be different. The kind of equipment that you will see will be different. In chemistry, you will see lots of flasks, and a heater and things like that, and test tubes and so on. In physics, what you might see, depending on what aspect of physics, you might see a prism, a light source, the electrical circuits and so on. If you are in biology, you will see a microscope, you will see a microtome, cutting machine, okay, plants, animals, preserved animals, cutting toolkit, right? So that to cut the frog or whatnot. So it depends on what aspect you are studying, some things change. Ditto for Darshana-Shastra. Depending on the emphasis of that particular Darshana-Shastra, some of these things are reorganized, but intrinsically, they are exactly the same. This is also the logic of scientific method. Yes, in the words of Sir Karl Popper, you start with a problem. I mean, why do you even do this? Because there is a problem that is not been solved, that is not been provided explanation, a satisfactory explanation by existing theories, by existing siddhanta. Siddhanta is a word from Darshana-Shastra, Nyaya Darshan. Okay, pramana, prameya, prayojana, okay, drishtanta, siddhanta, samshaya, avayava, tarka, nirnaya, vada. Those are the things. So now you have a problem. In order to solve that problem, which has not been solved by previous theories, what do? You propose a new theory, propose a solution, essentially. That solution has to come or must be stated in the form of the statement of your theory, hetu, or in Nyaya hetu, reasoning. Okay, that is that prameya, conjecture, guess, theory, plausible solution. Just because you said it's not done, now what you do is you take that problem itself in a way becomes a evidence, right? Because your existing theory is not solving, not giving an answer to that. And then you use your tantra yukti, ingenuity, all the background knowledge, okay, to create experiments, to generate experiments, develop experiments, or based on the theory, make predictions and try to see how you can validate these predictions with available evidence, existing evidence, okay, nature, observations, creating ingenious experiments and generating observations, generating data, generating output, and do the comparison with the theory. Okay, so that's this is doubt clearing machine. And what you come up with is a scientific and logical solutions. You may propose a new theory, and that's how original work takes place, which is to say, if there is truly somebody's original work and not just copycatting, copycat, copy paste, then you should, when you ask that person the question, also, what was the tough problem that you were trying to solve that was not solved by anyone else? They should able to very distinctly, very crisply able to state it. Back to the context of Mahabharata, no other Mahabharata researcher, exceptions none. Now, this is also a talk time, guys. So if you have a exception to what I am claiming, bring it on. Okay, we'll able to say what was that tough problem that he or she was trying to solve that was not solved by previous Mahabharata researchers, and therefore the person said, hey, you know what? Let me do something about the dating of Mahabharata. And of course, then you ask the next question. So I'm saying here, what is the tough problem? Then you ask them, okay, so yeah, you did some work. I heard that, and you are claiming 1 year for the Mahabharata war. What is the statement of your theory? What is your hetu? Now they will give you some answer. Pick that answer and see if it passes the test of a scientific statement, a statement of a scientific theory. What are some of the examples? Like, say, take modern astronomy or cosmology. Let's go back to 2000 years, the Western Europe or Western European thinking. Ptolemy. Okay, what is Ptolemy's theory? In a simple language, you can say it. Earth is at the center, everyone is rotating around it. Fast forward to 1500 years, by 1500 years to time of Copernicus, ask Copernicus what is the statement of his theory. The statement of his theory is, Copernicus may not have said it, but we understand it. Well, Earth is not at the center, rather, Sun is at the center and everyone is rotating around it. What is the statement of Kepler's theory? Because these previous two guys, Ptolemy and Copernicus, had said the orbits of everyone who is rotating around the Earth, in case of Ptolemy, or around the Sun, in case of Copernicus, they were circular orbits. Circular was considered God's perfection in Western Europe. Okay. Now Kepler said, no, they are not circular. And that therefore, like local people that time, many actually did. They said, oh yeah, he's not respecting the previous acharyas in the Western European context. I'm using this word deliberately, humorously. Okay. Because what? He was doing original work, and original work is not at all appreciated by dogmatic individuals. Okay. So what did Kepler say? He said, yes, Sun at the center, and the planets are orbiting around the sun, but they are not orbiting in an exactly circular orbit, but rather they are orbiting in an elliptical orbit. But he couldn't tell exactly why they were in elliptical orbit. He said that's God's plan, kind of. He didn't say it, but that's what he assumed. Now you come to Newton and you say, what's Newton? What's your theory? And Newton said, anytime there are two inertial bodies, like a sun and an earth, sun and a Jupiter, Jupiter and a Saturn and all that, there is always a attractive force between them. And based on that, he put a formula, F equal to ma. Guess what? That is what? Around 17th, this was during the 17th century. Do you know something? Long before that, Surya Siddhanta has already given formulae, in terms of to be used in finding the mean positions of the planets, but also the exact position of the planets, like Madhyamadikar, like a mean position, but also Spashtadikar, the precise position, okay, which does deviate from the mean position in a formula. Until Newton, the Western Europe had no appreciation or actually no concept of that you can do this, the cosmology business, the planetary business, in the form of formulae. They were all doing it with the geometries and so on, which is also, by the way, borrowed from India. But even this concept of a formula is also borrowed from India, that it can be done like that. In fact, it was unbelievable to them that that could be done. But again, back to Newton's theory that two inertial bodies always have an attractive force among them. Okay, and that's what he called gravity. And so he said, it just exists. But somebody says, why does it exist? He says, I don't know. And they would say, okay, how does that attractive force work? Like, is there a rope that binding the two bodies? And he said, hypothesis non-fingo, I haven't seen it. Okay, now Einstein had to come and explain what gravity is, which is the bending of a space-time and so on. Okay, so for each of this theory, you can state it. What is my theory? Astronomy descriptions of the Mahabharata text are actual descriptions of Mahabharata times. See, the theories are very simple. Earth is at the center, sun is at the center. Okay, all the orbits are going in an elliptical orbit. Two planetary bodies, two masses, two inertial bodies have attraction among them. These are very simple things. Astronomy descriptions of Mahabharata text are actual observations of Mahabharata times. Ask any other Mahabharata dating researcher what is his or her theory. Either you'll get a very crazy answer, and that's why you need to understand, the viewer need to understand, have a sense of scientific acumen. A statement of a theory needs to be needs to be universal, and needs to be generic. Okay, now look at all these statements. It did not say Earth is at the center and everyone is rotating around, but they will not rotate around the Earth if this happens. Now, you can do that, and that is allowed in science. That is called the auxiliary hypothesis, and we'll talk about that also. But the auxiliary hypothesis should increase the empirical content of your theory. Okay, we'll talk about that some other time. So they will not able to do this. Now, guess what? Now you come to the evidence. They don't want to take all the evidence. First thing, the other Mahabharata researchers are not aware of other additional Mahabharata evidence. Most of them are purely copy and paste, purely borrowing from others. And others, some of those who have come up with their own claim another year, guess what? They take the evidence very selectively. Most of them will use the evidence from Mahabharata until like some here and there. Out of 300, some even by just random chance, some of the evidence will match, right? So that they match. And then you say, what about this? Then they bring, well, the Mahabharata has seen interpolations and Parthabhed. Yeah. But why did you not talk about that before? Before even getting into it, and I will do another episode, how do we deal with Parthabhed? How do we deal with interpolations? How do we even recognize interpolation? What do we do if we suspect something as a interpolation? How do we suspect something as an interpolation? And how do we treat interpolation? How do we deal with Parthabhed? I will do a separate episode on that. But my point is, this discussion needs to happen before even you propose a claim. So you cannot keep on saying, hey, how do you explain this Mahabharata evidence? And you say, look, here it matches. How about this one? Oh, look, here it matches. I said, how about this one? And now it doesn't match. You say, oh, no, hold on. There are part of it. No, bring that evidence before, discussion before. Because the previous two that you match, there was also part of it. And you took a certain position to deal with that part of it. So why does suddenly the hetu changes? So what it means is once you set the hetu cannot change. Okay, that is the statement of a theory. So that's where they have a trouble. When it comes to evidence, they don't take all the evidence into account, take selective evidence. Most of them actually right now, after my work, okay, majority, if not all other Mahabharata dating researchers are taking a position that guess what? Because there are Pathabhed, because there are interpolation in the Valmiki Ramayana and Mahabharata, we should not look at the evidence of a Mahabharata, we should not look at the evidence of Ramayana, and we should try to determine the year of Mahabharata war based on non-Mahabharata evidence. We should try to determine the timing of Ramayana based on non-Valmiki Ramayana evidence. There cannot be another good example of utter stupidity than these statements. But let's move on. Now, what happens when you come to Pratyaksha objective test? Same problem. Okay, they will make some tall claims. And when I ask for objective testing, or when you ask for objective testing, they say, hey, that's your problem. Well, if you propose a theory and here is the evidence is there, Mahabharata evidence, then it is the person who proposes the theory, it is a job of that individual to explain. And it's perfectly okay to say, hey, I cannot explain. I cannot objectively test this observation. Or in other cases, I can objectively test this observation, but the output does not match with my date. Nothing wrong with this. You can always show, it's like a cricket match. See, one day, like both parties make runs, both parties take wickets, and still we say one party is a winner. Based on what? Based on the number of runs, based on some basic other rules. In a tennis match, what happens? Two players, okay, best of five, let's say, they play and see if one player A wins and wins in a decisive fashion, 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, like in the best of five. Guess what? Even then, the other player has still made some points. Even when the ultimate score looks like 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, still there is a very likely that the other player has made some points. Yeah, so it's okay to talk about those points. I mean, they did not show up in this score. It could have been instead of 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, it could be 6-1, 6-2, and 6-3. Still, this player is a winner. This player lost the game. Well, he won some individual games, right? In individual sets. Still, he is considered a loser. By the way, in science, we have something called a verisimilitude score or truth likeness score, which is not any different than the scores that we use in ordinary sports, such as cricket and football, like American football or soccer, or what did I mention just now? Tennis and any game, badminton, table tennis, and so on and so forth. It's not any different. It's known as a truth likeness score. Okay, read books of Sir Karl Popper. Okay, read my Bhishma Nirvana. Read Jivan Rao's. Now, let me see if I have Jivan Rao's. Maybe not here. Okay, Jivan Rao's Yuganta, the American version of it. But my Bhishma Nirvana talks about truth likeness score. Okay, and how to score. Now, this is as published by Amazon. Okay, if you go to Subbu Publications in India, I mean, the quality is a lot better when Subbu publishes it. So if you're in India, you have no reason to go to Amazon. Just get it from Subbu. But if you're outside India or anywhere else around India, anywhere else outside India, then Amazon is the good one. Okay, then the background knowledge. Again, people need to state what the background knowledge is. I'll tell you again, funny story about it. In background knowledge, like, you know what? Because Mahabharata evidence goes against them. They are not working on any specific problem. Okay. They are in a hurry to become popular and make some name for themselves. Okay. I consider that foolish, but if they want to do it, many people are doing it. Okay, all of us have that some desire to become famous. So I will not even criticize it, although it's worthy of criticism if you study Bhagavad Gita. But you know what? If people don't have their inner barometer, to say whether what they are doing is worthwhile, the life they are living is worthwhile or not, then sometimes it helps, nothing wrong. Like sometimes it helps when other people praise you, then okay, I must be must be on the right track. Okay, so it helps. So I'm not criticizing that. Sometimes you get some social respect or some award, and you say, well, okay, I think somebody at least likes my work, or somebody thinks this is worthy of some attention, and so on. So to that extent, this all social acceptance or social recognition has value. Okay, so I will admit that. But that motivates people to somehow become famous. That is the point I am mentioning. And look at YouTube. YouTube is a good one, right? All kinds of crazy things people will do to get attention, and they will have this million views and so on. By the way, some people tell me, oh yeah, make this very attractive, otherwise your views will not go up. Guys, I can assure you, of course, I want millions of people to view it, watch this, and internalize it, understand it, become excited, take some inspiration, do their own original research. But it's in my mind, it's not about numbers. In fact, I mean, I would love to see million, but I don't even necessarily expect that to be the number. Bhagavad Gita says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaschinmam veti tatvata. Among the thousands, one person becomes interested. Among such thousands, one person finally reaches that ultimate destination or takes it. So the ratio is intrinsically expected to be smaller, although million is not such a big number when you look at the 7-8 billion population of the world. And this is for the humanity. This is not limited to Hindus. This is not limited to India, by the way. Okay. Anyways, so background knowledge, what people will do, they will quote. So we are talking of a Mahabharata that happened based on a Mahabharata evidence 7,500 years ago. But even those others who have some different claims, like in the 3000 BC, that there is like a huge population in that 3000 BC area, possibly like 50, 60 folks, and they never debate among themselves. Isn't that amazing? Everyone has a different year, but they don't debate. You can find a good analogy with the modern Indian politics, some of the small parties all coming together, trying to fight against Modi ji or something, Okay, they have such a strong differences among themselves, but in order to fight with our prime minister, they are willing to forget their differences and come together. You will see that same wonderful show going on when it comes to dating of Mahabharata, and especially among the folks, but not just limited to them. The claims around 3000 BC plus minus 200 years, but actually the folks who are into 2000 BC bracket and 1000 BC bracket. Okay, a lot of fun. All right. So Agama, what they will do is, just like we are today discussing the dating of Mahabharata, 2000 years ago, people were discussing the dating of Mahabharata. 1000 years ago, people were discussing the dating of Mahabharata. 500, 400 years ago, people were discussing the dating of Mahabharata. So they will take the literature of those folks and use that in support of something what they're trying to claim. No, you have to analyze their works. You just cannot blindly take that as a agama. Only agama we can take is a Mahabharata text. And remember, Mahabharata text has multiple manuscripts, and there is variations, part of it. We have to take all this into account. We have to describe our method, how we are going to handle it, and then move on. If you don't describe, that is fine, but then don't ever raise that as an objection. Oh, but because of a Pathaved, this doesn't match. But because of Pathaved, not every Pathaved that you see will match for your date. By definition, they are different. But so you are going to select one of them. So what is your method? And it can be anything, but you have to state it. If you are raising the bogey of a Pathaved, if you are raising the bogey of a different manuscript, okay, same thing. For example, if you are pulling, say, Varahamir, or if you're pulling something said by Aryabhatiya or Bhaskaracharya or somebody else, you say, why are you taking this? Or why are you taking that statement blindly? Why not put that statement to a criticism? Okay. And then, of course, you draw the inference. There are also a lot of problems. I already talked a lot about it, so I'll not go there. So what was the problem that I started with. Okay? In fact, when you progress, it is from one problem to a solution to another problem to another solution. Every time you get a different solution doesn't mean you put a different theory. In fact, that is ridiculous, by the way. Okay, but we'll get to that. So the problem I started with is this Arundhati Vasishta observation. Okay, and imagine why I'm saying a problem. The way it is drawn is like, you know, the cup, you know, the guest has arrived and you want to serve a tea. Okay, so the cup is there, the saucer is there is a hot tea in it, but guess what? You have nothing to place it on, as if that's a problem. This is metaphorically a demonstration of a problem. So think of Arundhati Vasishta problem like this. When I finally solved it after 15 years, that was the outcome. What was the outcome? That was the bracket that AKK is referring to. Okay, it said decisively, no ifs, no but, no questions asked. Of course, people should ask a question. Okay, if they don't comprehend this, then they are going to ask question, and that's welcome. If the question is genuine and intelligent, I bother to answer them, like AKK's question. If it's not, I ignore it. As simple as that. When finally the answer was found, what was it? That decisively it showed the Mahabharata war did not happen. Pay attention. Did not happen any time before 11,091 BCE, and it did not happen any time after 4508 BCE, which is to say, based on that verse, Mahabharata war happened sometime between 11,091 BCE and 4508 BCE. Okay, so this is the story in 2009, guys. And because Vartak had already come up with 5561 BCE, some 30 years before that, I am putting this saying Vartak 5561 BCE. So his year definitely falls between the two. Now remember, we talked about necessary and sufficient conditions. The fact that any year proposed for the year of Mahabharata war must fall between these two dates is a necessary condition, but not sufficient condition. Why? Because it's a necessary condition because of the Arundhati Vasishta observation, what it is saying. Why it is not sufficient? Because there is not only 1 year between these two dates, between this narrow band. It's not that narrow, it's a 5,000, 6,000 years. Because why not 5563 BC? Why not 6280 BC? Why not 5228 BC? All of them will still satisfy the necessary condition of falling between 11,091 BC and 4508 BC. So its necessary condition is satisfied in Vartak's case, but not necessarily the sufficient. Why sufficient? One thing is there are many years. Other reason is there are many additional pieces of evidence, and we have only looked at one Arundhati Vasishta observation. Okay, but let me tell you something else that happened. This was in 2009. Using the data, using Skygazer, Voyager, you know, which was the up-to-date data about astronomy, about the stars, about everything else available in around that 2009 is what I had used. Now, this is the process of science, you know. So what Siddhartha Chabraji did in 2019 is praiseworthy. You know, somewhere he felt that, let me see whatever this Nilesh is saying. I mean, is this true? I mean, whatever he's saying, let me validate that. Let me verify. Much of the research that, by the way, happens, you know, in ordinary science and engineering fields is of that kind too. Many times what we do, always it's not like it leads to something original. Many times it's simply a validation of what somebody has done in the past. Your goal may be something different, but that all you end up doing is a validation of what somebody else has done in the past. Okay, different subject, but very related to this, because that's what Chabraji ended up doing. So when he was trying to test it, think of this as he trying to falsify my theory. Now that may or may not be his intention. That doesn't matter. But if you are trying to test somebody's claim, hey, let me see if this is correct, or let me see if I get different answer. In principle, you're trying to falsify it. This is a scientific language. This is not like the two people are enemies or anything. Okay, this is to be celebrated, guys. This is to be celebrated. So what Siddhartha Chabraji did in 2019, so about 10 years after my solving of this Arundhati Vasishtha problem, he looked at the latest data, because the astronomy data, by the way, Surya Siddhanta talks about it. Okay, it's called Dhruta correction. Based on your model, if something doesn't agree, then you have to find out, do the root cause analysis, find out what happened, and if justified, make that appropriate correction. Okay, so because astronomy constants also change, but in this case, it's not so much a change of astronomy theory or constant, but a more precision. Okay, more precise data. So in 10 years, we are getting much more data from Hubble telescopes, all the satellites that are out there and so on. And that data gets fed into NASA to the JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab database. And from there, it goes into all different softwares. I don't know exactly how Siddhartha Shabraji access specific data, whether he used a specific software. I don't have the details. But when he did it with the latest data, you can say the latest at the time of 2019, he found whatever I said is correct, except one difference. Based on this more precise data, he said actually the time interval is not from 11,091 BC to 4508 BC. Remember, different data sets, okay? One is from 2009, other is from 2019, more precise, you can say. Or at least different. At a minimal, it's a different, okay? And he said that actually the time interval is from 10,248 BC to 4636 BC. So what does that say now? Decisively, we can say that the Mahabharata war did not happen anytime after 4636 BC, and it did not happen anytime before 10,248 BC. Now, these two statements are not conflicting. The 11,091 BC, 4508 BC bucket is not conflicting with the 10,248 to 4636 BC. They are complementary to each other. It's very important that you understand, okay, that you understand what it is. All right. So what was that Arundhati Vasishtha problem? Just as a pictorially, like, that doubt elimination machine, I'm saying, okay, so that was the problem. We need a sitting place for it. That sitting place for it is the theory. It says, oh, so Arundhati Yachesha Visuta Rajastrailoke Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishtha Prushtata Kruta. Dhritarashtra is telling King Vyasadeva is telling King Dhritarashtra day before the Mahabharata war. He's saying, my dear king, I'm seeing so many nimittas. Okay, so many lakshanas, so many signs. Okay, this planet, the Saturn is giving pida to Rohini. Okay, the full moon of Kartika was like looking like a lotus flower color, like a reddish color. Okay, the sign on the moon is not visible. Okay, and that has been also interpreted in 10 different ways. Arundhati Vasishtha. Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha. Okay, and then all the planetary discussions that we are having, okay, those are all nimittas, guys, and they all come here. Second chapter and the third chapter of Bhishma Nirvana, the rest of the Vara Parva, like, Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Shalya Parva, Sautika Parva, Stri Parva, and then if you go before Bhishma Parva, the Udyoga Parva, the preparations for the war, and if you go beyond the Stri Parva, then you go into Shanti Parva, Anushasan Parva, Ashwamedha Parva, Ashram Vasika Parva. You see these references everywhere. Okay, they come as a nimitta, they come as just a description, they come as a description of somebody's dream. Okay, they just come as a straightforward references, they come as a upamana, they come in all form. If it is astronomy, we look at it like this, because remember the theory. All astronomy descriptions are visual descriptions or factual descriptions or actual descriptions of the sky of Mahabharata times. So if from the solving perspective, this is a problem, this was the theory here. What is the theory? Visual observations of the sky. We have to literally see from the earth, Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishtha. That is my theory. Now, I'll tell you something funny, okay? When I ask other Mahabharata researchers, what is your theory? If they are not face-to-face, they avoid answering and just run away. If face-to-face, then they will say, oh, my theory is same as yours. Okay, I said, well, do you know my theory? Oh, yeah, same as yours. I said, okay, so can you show Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishtha? Then they go on a tangent, changing of a goalpost. But this is not only limited to Arundhati. This is limited to every single astronomy observation. Every single astronomy observations bar none out of 300 plus. Okay. But so solving that problem, so it has not settled yet. What is the theory? Visual observation of the sky. Okay, where is that evidence? Oh, that's the evidence that Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishtha. Today, in our times, it's not, and that's why it is a problem. Why it is a problem to solve? Because today it is not. So now the question is, oh, okay, so today is Vasishtha walking ahead of Arundhati. So when was that time when Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishtha? And also, is it even possible astronomically that Arundhati could ever walk ahead of Vasishtha in the past? That is the problem. That is the information we are trying to verify. Think of this as an explanation or evidence we are looking for. And the theory is saying, hey, that has to be the visual observations in the sky. Okay, so now we went on objective testing. How did I do the objective testing? With mathematical calculations, with astronomy software, simulations, and so on. What is the background knowledge I used? Indian astronomy, the identification of Arundhati, identification of Vasishtha, any information I could gather about them. Okay, what do I know from modern astronomy as a background knowledge? The latest data, the software simulations, the mathematical calculations, the formulae, the algorithms, the polynomials, all of that. And what was the conclusion? That Arundhati was indeed walking ahead of Vasishtha between 10,248 BC and 4636 BC. The additional inference of that is Arundhati was not walking ahead of Vasishtha anytime after 4636 BC and anytime before 10,248 BC. Arundhati was walking ahead of Vasishtha at the time of Mahabharata war. See, now this is just empirical, but now you have to bring it together in a logical fashion. It requires certain minimum level of intellect. And that says Mahabharata war is not possible outside this interval. So this is the time interval, for example, that AKK was referring to. As I said, Arundhati Vasishtha gave me this interval. If I take Bhishma Nirvana evidence, is going to give me another interval. And guess what? That interval cannot conflict with this interval. I mean, in reality, it may, then we have got a bigger problem, which means what? Now, how do we take this data of a Mahabharata to make sense of it? But just like I showed you here, these two, like my inference based on Arundhati Vasishtha observation made in 2009 is not conflicting with what Siddhartha Chabraji did in 2019. In fact, this is a moment for celebration. Okay, wow. And I told Siddhartha Chabraji, I said, thank you very much. Now it gets even tighter. Now, where this thing might have become problematic, let's say, and therefore additional discussion would have required, for example, would be required. For example, imagine the proposed year for the Mahabharata war by, say, me or Vartak, doesn't matter. But let's say by me, because since this 11,091 was done by me, what if that year had come out to, let's say, 11,000 BCE right here? Now, Siddhartha Chabraji and myself, we have to say, well, hold on, who is right in that? Because guess what? I mean, I have to see how 10,248 is the data set of 2019 correct or data set of 2009 correct? And why the 2019 data set is incorrect? I'm not saying it is incorrect. If I have to explain, if I have to justify why a year 11,000 BC, suppose if that was my year, that is not my year for the Mahabharata war, my year is right here, 5516 BC. If it was, then these two different individuals coming with two different inferences based on the same data point is a point of discussion. Okay, otherwise it's not. So these both are agreeing with each other and it's a point for celebration. It's important that people understand this. Okay, so here, yeah, so for example, what did I do? Did I stuck dogmatically to 11,091 BC and 4508 BC? I did not, and I have no reason to. I said, Siddhartha Chabraji, thank you very much. Namaskar, thank you very much. Okay, yes, let's go with this one, 10,248 BC to 4636 BC. In no way it conflicted my previous inference. I'm saying it's between 11,091 BC and 4508 BCE. And Chabraji is still saying the same thing. Yes, it is between 10,248 BC and 4636 BCE. Therefore, I gave you the example. If suppose after that interval, if I would have claimed for whatever reason, right or wrong, if I had claimed the year of Mahabharata war is 11,000 BCE, then Siddhartha Chabraji and my inferences were at odds, not based on Arundhati Vasishta, but based on the specific year. And then he should have asked me, how did you arrive at 11,000? And I have to explain, but we don't have to necessarily fight on Arundhati Vasishta observation as long as the final year claimed by me or him or anyone else falls between 10,248 BC and 4636 BC, at least not based on Arundhati Vasishta observation. So suppose instead of 5561 BC, someone here claims like say 5528 BC here, or somebody has some other year, 7000 BCE. And there are some Mahabharata researchers outside India, non-Indian origin, they are claiming certain years, okay? And I'm having a correspondence with them. Okay, they don't want to come in the public. That's why I'm not discussing those claims. Okay, by the way, let me assure you 5561 is decisive year, okay, based on even already the discussions I have. But the reason even I mentioned that is because when somebody comes up with say 7000 BCE as the year of Mahabharata war, my position is not to say what kind of stupidity is that. No, I say, well, yeah, very interesting, because it still fits the Arundhati Vasishta, this bracket, and say, let's discuss, okay, how did you arrive at 7000 BCE? So therefore, I say 5561 BCE is the best claim for the year of Mahabharata war among all the available claims today. But if somebody comes up with a better claim than 5561 BC, in my subjective judgment, I'm convinced that they will not be able to. But if they do, and if it is indeed true, and it passes this all other test for 300 plus observations and everything else, no other person, no, I would be the happiest person in the world. Okay. So I want you to understand, I'm not stuck with the 5561, no emotional attachment. It is only objective, scientific, logical attachment to that 5561 BCE because it is so fascinating. But let's go further. So yeah, the cup is kind of hanging. Now that's why we do this. Okay, now we find the coffee table, the tea table, you can say. Okay, and now it sits peacefully. Now what happens? When that happens, it leads to many more problems. Suppose this 5561 BCE of Vartak was not there. Okay, and that wouldn't have mattered, because besides Vartak, there were 3 or 4 other individuals. For example, Lele Shastri, he had proposed 5228 BCE. Modak, Mr. Modak had proposed not an exact year, but about like 5000. In some way, critiquing the date of Lele Shastri, great astronomer Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, in his critique of Lele Shastri's date, had kind of softly arrived at possibly 7300 BCE. Not exact year, but the range. So those claims were there, and there were possibly a couple other claims, okay, in this area. So why did I pick 5561 BC? Is it like some special affection towards great Dr. P.V. Vartak? No, that's not how it works. For example, when one of the time I met him, this must be before 2014. I know that because I had not published the historic Ram. Okay, I don't have the Subbu copy of it. I don't think I have that copy either. But see, the historic Ram, this is Amazon. But Subbu publication will say the 12,209 BCE. Everything else inside is identical. A better quality book when Subbu publishes it, of course, than Amazon. Okay, like a print on demand type of thing. But still, I mean, if you're outside, hey, don't wait for a Subbu publication. Just grab a copy. The key is that you read it. You read it as fast as you can, read it as soon as you can, and that you read it multiple times. So the reason I said that is that specific time when I met Dr. Vartak must be before 2014. That's when I published this book. And definitely after the Mahabharata book, after this book, when did the Mahabharata war happen? So now this is the Subbu publication version, or where is it? Yes, or this is the Amazon, when did the Mahabharata war happen? Okay, this is published on Amazon. The reason I'm showing this is, So it was between 2011 and 2014. And I'm trying to come to this point. So did I select 5561 BC for some special affection for great Dr. Vartak? Not at all. At that time when I met him, and I told him, Dr. Vartak, I have also researched on Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, and I have arrived at the date of Valmiki Ramayana. And he said, yeah, please tell me what's your date? It is right in his clinic, And I said, doctor, it is way different, it's removed by 5,000 years. It's way different, I said, way different than yours. He said, please tell me. I said, it's removed by 5,000 years from your date. And he had proposed like around 7,000 BCE, 7,200, 300 BCE for Ramayana. And as soon as I said it's removed by 5,000 years, and I said 12,209 BC, you know what he said? He had not seen my work. So obviously, when I publish it, he would critique that work, and he should critique that work. Now, he was very old by that time and never had the chance to do that, the Ramayana book. Mahabharata, fortunately, he saw it in a way. But in fact, my Ramayana book is dedicated to him. Okay. And see, this is also a very important point. For example, right here, I don't know if you can read it. I'm not sure. Okay, maybe I need to do it here. Forgive me. Okay, let's see there. To Padmakar Vishnu Vartak. Okay. Now, why did I do it? Because he just said, great. No, I was falsifying his date. Okay. But as soon as I said, no, this was before the book was written and published, 12,209, he said, okay, congratulations, my blessings are with you, go ahead. He had not seen my work. So therefore I said, afterwards, if he had a chance, he would have critiqued my work. He should have critiqued my work. I encourage all of you to do it, right? He just was ecstatic. He was happy. Now, it doesn't mean he necessarily agreed with my date. I mean, we never had the chance on the Ramayana, that discussion. And please read Historic Rama. Again, I have a whole chapter on the 7,300-year claim of Dr. Vartak. The whole chapter on Dr. Vartak's claim. The whole chapter on Pushkar Bhatnagar, because that's also an extremely disastrous claim, but it is for some reason popular in political circles, okay, the so-called Indic social circles. Late Pushkar Bhatnagar, he was with Indian Revenue Service. Actually, I was trying to contact him for a long time. Unfortunately, we could never make one-on-one connection. I kept on sending emails to the email address I had or the different email addresses that I found. And then finally, it was his daughter who wrote to me saying that her dad is no more. Okay. So I have a whole chapter 18 in this book, Theory and Proposal of Dr. P.V. Vartak. So please read that, okay, where he proposes around 7,000 BC for Ramayana. And I show why that is not correct. I have a chapter 19 on the theory and proposal of Pushkar Bhatnagar, where I show why that is not correct. He proposes around 5,000 BC. In fact, same time as my Mahabharata date, which is to say not my Mahabharata, but because there are other dates and people keep on fighting. In fact, his Mahabharata, Pushkar Bhatnagar's Ramayana, as if it happens some 400, 300, 400 years after Mahabharata. Okay, so all the fun. But I have a whole chapter on it. I have another chapter on the theory and proposal of Yardi, Dr. Yardi, and there were three authors, SRS, the initial I took, okay? They proposed, by the way, 10,000 BCE, okay? So I have specific chapter. That's how you should critique it, okay? This doesn't show disrespect. In fact, this is not always a guarantee, but many times when somebody critiques your work, whether that person even understands it or not, is showing some respect to you, actually a great respect to you. He or she considers your work worthy of critique. Okay, that's to understand this, you need to have a scientific acumen. Otherwise, it's not for you. All right, so this was the bracket now, right? As I said, there are other brackets also. And this is a simple explanation. So go back to my 2009, 11,091 BC, I could show that Vasishtha and Arundhati were walking together. No one was ahead, no one was behind. Ditto 4508 BC, no one was ahead, no one was behind. That is the secret why that defines the bracket. Why that is so? Because between these 2 years, between that bracket, anywhere, not just 5561 BCE, Arundhati could be seen, was seen walking ahead of Vasishtha. And only between this bracket. Now, when I say this bracket, now you say, what about Siddhartha Chabra? Well, Siddhartha Chabra's brackets is falling within this. Okay, so all the years that Siddhartha Chabra's bracket shows, Arundhati was also walking ahead of Vasishtha, and that's why there is no conflict. Okay, and of course, the additional evidence 5561 BC comes out as the year of Mahabharata war. Now, by the way, don't forget that was AKK's question. So I said, what is the time bracket and how did you arrive at that? How did I nail down 5561 BC? So let's begin with this more refined bracket of Siddhartha Chabra for the Arundhati Vasishtha observation. And from there, how do we arrive at 5561 BC? I hope you guys are watching. I mean, if you listen to this and you say, oh yeah, I don't know that. Well, guess what? That means you have not watched the previous episodes in this Shraddha and Pradnya series. You need to stop it even right here or just now, almost at the end, so you can complete this, but then go back, start number 1 and start watching Shraddha and Pradnya series. Okay? Because in a very patient fashion, very patiently, I am describing, going through each and every nitty-gritty observation, showing what is the conclusion and how do we arrive at 5561 BC. Quickly, as just pictorially, I'm going to show it to you here. The key aspect, the key evidence that allowed me from this 5,000 year interval, nail it down to 5561 BCE. I'm not saying the only evidence, this is not sufficient, but this is necessary, was the descriptions, 4, 5, 6 different descriptions of Saturn given in the Mahabharata text in the context of different nakshatras, different types of movements and motions and so on, allowed me to understand that Saturn was between Uttara, Phalguni and Chitra. In case of Jupiter, again, 4 or 5 different astronomy observations of Jupiter that no other Mahabharata researchers dare talk about. You raise that Jupiter observation, they are going to change the goalpost. They are going to run away with the tail between their legs. Okay, they will not discuss this. So Jupiter also has 4 or 5 observations in the Mahabharata text that allows us to understand that Jupiter was in the area of Ajeshta and Shravan. Their retrograde motions together are described in the vicinity of a Vishakha. So where is the nakshatra Vishakha? Uttara, Phalguni, Hasta, Chitra, then Swati, then Vishakha, then Anuradha, and then Jeshta. So see, Vishakha is here. Okay, on one side you go Swati, on another side you go Anuradha. Then beyond Swati you go to Chitra, then you found the position of Saturn there. On this other side you go beyond Anuradha to Jeshta, and you found the position of Jeshta. Shamo Graha Prajvalita Sadhumasa Pavaka Indra Tejasvi Nakshatra Jeshta Akramya Tishtati. If you go on the Saturn side, Shveto Grah Tatha Chitra Samati Kramya Tishtati. What about Uttara Phalguni Bhagam Nakshatra Akramya Surya Putrena Pidate? What about Shravan and Jupiter? Magaswangarako Vakra Shravane Cha Brahaspati. And why these two together near Vishakha going retrograde? That is that Vishakha nakshatra right in the middle. And what is the description? Samvatsara sthainancho graha prajvalito vubho Vishakhayo samipasto brahaspati shanascharo. So these, all the references, 5 references of Saturn, 4 references of Jupiter, about like a 10 references together, they were decisive in narrowing down. In what way? They were decisive in narrowing down because, see, no matter which position they were in, whatever that position, that will satisfy all the 10 different astronomy observations of Saturn and Jupiter for any given time. How many times they will repeat? In this interval, if you take 11,091 BC to 4500 BC, say approximately 6,000 years. Or if you take Siddhartha Chabra's more refined interval, say approximately 5,000 years. So what do we have to do? Whatever is the position that is the ideal position, desired position for Jupiter, and whatever is the ideal or desired position of Saturn, that can explain all these 8 to 10 descriptions from the Mahabharata for Jupiter and Saturn individually or together or together, how frequently they will repeat? Well, Jupiter's orbital period is 12 years for simplicity, close to 12 anyways, and Saturn is 30. So if you want to find a combined number, what is that combined number? You know how to do it, like, the least common denominator and all that stuff, Lasavi, Masavi. So you start 12. Okay. So in Marathi, 12 24, 12 3 36, 12 4 48, 12 5 60. So those are the numbers. On this side, Saturn, 30 I'm taking, 30 times 2 is 60. So every 60 years, essentially, guess what? I will get the situation where these both planets will be in the same place. I'm not saying which place, whatever place it is, that is required, that is necessary, that is ideal to explain all the 8 to 10 descriptions of Saturn and Jupiter from the Mahabharata text. Whatever that situation is, will repeat approximately every 60 years. So now if you take 5,000 year time interval of Arundhati divided by 60, can you do the math? In fact, let me take it 60, 6,000, like 11,091 BCE to 4508 gives you about 6,500 years. Let me take 6,000. So 6,000 divided by 60. What does that tell you? There will be in this time interval about 100 such instances when the position of Saturn, position of Jupiter will be such that will directionally satisfy this. Maybe not all of them, but directionally will satisfy most of them. So I reduce from 6,000 years or 6,000 individual years within that time bracket down to what? 100 years. And you might consider 100 plus minus 1 year. So you might consider 300 years. I'm doing plus minus 1, so times 3. So 300 years at every instance out of 6,000. That's impressive. But out of that, again, the question, AKK's question is, how did I arrive at 5561 BC? And the answer is, well, not this, but I'll just add this. So Pida, now the Pida is, Saturn is doing Pida to Rohini, Jupiter is doing Pida to Rohini, Sun and Moon are doing Pida to Rohini. Now Mahabharata evidence tells us what should be the position of the Sun. Okay, it has to be in the vicinity of a Jyeshta. Jyeshta plus minus 2 nakshatra. So Jyeshta, on one side Anuradha Vishakha, on the other side Mula Purvashada. Okay, so and the Mahabharata text says the Jupiter was giving Pida to Rohini on the 17th day of the war after sunset, was exactly in the same way Sun and Moon were giving Pida to Rohini on the first day of the Mahabharata war. Most Mahabharata researchers, I would say, exception none, every other Mahabharata researcher, any other Mahabharata researcher simply do not discuss Sun, Moon giving Pida and Jupiter giving Pida and Saturn giving Pida. They will run away, they will change the goalpost, they will change the subject, they will run away with the tail between their legs. Now, this is a metaphor. Some people literally don't understand. And some Mahabharata researchers start feeling like they have a tail in their back. Okay. See, this is when remember one episode I did on Crossan, Patrick Crossan, I forgot his name. Like, when metaphors are undertaken literally, then the humor emerges. That's what is happening. Some Mahabharata researchers feel angry. Other people who are not researchers of any kind, they feel pissed off because I use a metaphor like this, tail between the legs. Okay. Like, I say, oh yeah, this guy is abusing. And a lot of fun. Anyways, so not this reference, but Sun and Moon also, because Sun's position is fixed, and therefore now Jupiter has to give Pida to Rohini in the same way the Sun and Moon was giving Pida to Rohini. So that's why that additional restriction becomes very important. But now Mars has like what, 8 to 10 references, 8 different descriptions of Mars in the Mahabharata text. Guess what? What I'm showing you right on the screen just now, these are all planetary. These are all graha. Sun and Moon are also graha in Indian astronomy, but also Western astronomy, by the way, just so that you understand. They will call it a planet. That time they did call them planets. Okay, now we sort of separate Sun. We meaning Western Europe's actually separate Sun as a star. Indians knew that, but for astronomy purposes, they are all graha. Okay, so just on this, you can arrive at 5561 BC, which is to say, if you look at total of 8 to 10 references of Saturn and Jupiter and 8 to 10 references of Mars, and Sun and Moon has many references. I'm just saying only if you take that one references of Sun and Moon, bingo. The only year you would arrive is 5561 BC. But I'm going to give you some bonus point. Now, this is assuming you begin exploring the interval given by Arundhati Vasishtha observation. Yeah, you will arrive at 5561 BC. But the astronomy evidence of Mahabharata text is so fascinating that it doesn't matter whether you start searching within the Arundhati Vasishtha interval or not. Even if you start from today, 2022, and go back every year, go back every 60 years for appropriate positions of Saturn and Jupiter. Guys, whichever way you want to do it, do it. And just for simplicity, I mean, if you want to go 30,000 years in the past, hey, who am I to stop you? Have a blast. But I'm saying, since nobody is claiming Mahabharata or happening more than 10,000 years ago, I'm saying from today, 2022, if you go back for 10,000 years, the only year that you will arrive is 5561 BCE based on what you are seeing on the screen. And AKKG, that is the answer to your question. So yes, Arundhati Vasishtha observation did help me. And in fact, what I did is I started not only Dr. Vartak's claim, but there was a Lele Shastri's claim of 5228 BCE. Then somebody made me aware of a couple other claims that when I started analyzing, they came out to be utterly of a very poor quality. I mean, there was no science, there was no observation, there was no objective testing, nothing. But somebody had said something. But the particular year happened to be between this epoch of Arundhati. This is what I call epoch of Arundhati, from the upper limit to the lower limit. And so I could easily falsify them. What happened is with Dr. Vartak's claim of 5561 BC, so like Lele Shastri's claim of 5228 BC, there was a one more 5306 or so. I could instantaneously falsify, just like few checks, and it was not matching. Now, just to be sure, I looked at all 300 observations or easily 100 plus observations. But in case of Vartak, like the claim, it's not so much about the person again, the 5561 BC. So every time I was testing some observation for 5561 BCE, I want you to understand this. That's how science works. In principle, I was trying to falsify the claim of 5561 BCE. And what happened is, with every single astronomy observation that I was trying to objectively test in order to falsify 5561 BC, every time I failed to falsify 5561 BC. And therefore, we are saying it is a well-tested claim. Okay, so think of like a tennis player. You know, the tennis player A, we call him like a seeded one, something like this, top player now. No one can beat him, let's say we are saying in ordinary language. Now, you say, oh yeah, okay, can you have a game with C? Yeah, so A has a match with the C, A defeats C. A has a match with D, A defeats D. A has a match with B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. You know, I'm just giving as a metaphor again, guys, all the various players. And every time if A is defeating them, then we say, yeah, A is right now the top player. That is what the status of 5561 BCE. Now, the story only gets better, guys. So far, we are only discussing astronomy evidence. I'll move fast here. But if you go beyond astronomy, and by the way, there is additional astronomy evidence that also goes and supports 5561 BC, Mercury, Venus, comets, and there is much more, okay? The lunar tithis, lunar months, nakshatras, on and on, okay? In fact, if you look at beyond astronomy, so the astronomy is like all that we are discussing, or fractionally what we discuss is right here, and there is a more right there. But look at any other discipline of science. If the evidence exists in the context that you can connect using that doubt clearing machine, the formula of a logic of scientific method, the Nyaya Darshana Avayava method, if the evidence exists and if there is a way you can connect, guess what? It validates 5561 BCE, it corroborates 5561 BCE, and only 5561 BCE. How beautiful. Same thing for all these various disciplines of evidence that you're looking at. Quickly, Dr. P. V. Vartak had proposed 5561 BCE as the year of Mahabharata war as early as 1970, 80s. I know in 70s he has proposed 5480 BC as approximate period. How he proposed that? Go and read his book. It's worth reading and rereading. And then by 1980s, he nailed down to 5561 BCE. How he did it, I want you to go and read it. It's very different than mine. Actually, I would say it is think of this as a rare and lucky case. I'm discussing work of Dr. P. V. Vartak on 5561 BC. It is a case of it is a rare and lucky case of stumbling on the correct answer via incorrect method plus series of errors that as if canceled each other. That's what this story of Dr. P. V. Vartak's arriving at 5561 BCE. Okay, BCE is. So that is for the benefit of AKKG, but also for everyone else. I began with AV observation, followed by, of course, I knew about Dr. P. V. Vartak's date, but I also knew about like 30, 50, 60 other dates. And finally, when I solved the mystery of Arundhati Vasishta, then I said, oh, let me find out everyone. And then I found 130 dates, different dates, okay? I began with AV observation, Arundhati Vasishta, followed by planetary evidence of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. That's what I showed it. This is sufficient to arrive at a unique year of 5561 BC in the last 10,000 years. It doesn't matter where you begin. You can begin today, 2022, go backwards, only 5561 BC and no other year. Okay. Now 300 plus additional astronomy evidence of Mahabharata, like so going beyond Arundhati Vasishta, but going beyond Saturn, going beyond Jupiter and Mars astronomy evidence. Take all other astronomy evidence, it again validates, corroborates 5561 BC and only 5561 BC. Again, guys, if you think this is a tall claim, and I think you should take this as a tall claim, you know what? Tall claim is very easy to falsify if truly it is a tall claim. So Mahabharata dating researchers are not going to do it. They are going to change the goalpost. They are going to run away with the tail between their legs. They are going to find some utter tangent, okay? Somehow to confuse ordinary folks. But so therefore, I have no hope from them. But I'm hoping that someone of you or many of you will actually take this and don't trust me. I don't want you to trust me. I said, Nilesh, yeah? I mean, that's such a tall claim. Only last 10,000 years. Hey, I have heard that astronomy phenomenon is repetitive in nature. It repeats after a few years. And you are saying only one time, come on. No, don't say come on to me. I am asking you. I'm saying come on to you. I say, come on, guys. Okay. In Marathi, we say, kambar kasoon, so just get ready, learn your basic astronomy. Okay. Become comfortable with astronomy software, become comfortable with some mathematical calculation, get help of a astronomy expert to build your astronomy acumen, get help of a Sanskrit individual to become good at Sanskrit translation, interpretation, different possible translation, become good and in science, the basic etiquettes, become good in Nyaya Darshana, become good in logic. And, take this as a challenge. Your challenge, hey, you just say, my life purpose, meaning your life purpose is to show that 5561 BCE is not the only year in the last 10,000 years which agrees with the astronomy evidence of Mahabharata. Now somebody will say, Nilesh, like 300, that is like too much to discuss. Well, forget 300 just for now anyways, forget 300. Why not just this three? I mean, in answering AKKG, I said, this is it, guys. This is it, what I'm showing you on this page. 8 to 10 specific astronomy references for Saturn and Jupiter. 8 to 10 for Mars. Okay, and sometimes there is an overlap, like Maghaswangarako, Krashravanicha, Brahaspati, and so on. And then the Sun and Moon position. Pida giving to Rohini, Jupiter giving Pida to Rohini, Saturn giving Pida to Rohini. Even if you just take this, possibly what are we looking at? 20, so 25, let's say, max 30 references. And I'm not saying one should only test 30. No, that's utterly nonsensical. One has to test 300. But my point is, my claim is, even just taking these 330 or 300, your choice, come up with any other year in the last 10,000 years that also matches these descriptions for that year. My open challenge is nobody will able to come up with such a thing. Nobody. Now, this is a tall claim, guys. What are you waiting for? Get busy. Okay. That's how powerful the Mahabharata evidence is. That's how powerful Mahabharata evidence is. Okay. So I began with this. This is sufficient to arrive at the unique year of 5561 BC. The additional 300 plus additional astronomy evidence also validates, corroborates 5561 BCE, more important, and only 5561 BCE. Now, multidisciplinary evidence. So people say, there are these decorated Indic researchers, and they will say, well, but astronomy is not reliable. Well, what nonsense. You say it's not reliable because you do not understand even a damn word of astronomy. Only a fool will say this thing. Only a fool or a person who is ignorant of astronomy science will say such a thing. Okay, multidisciplinary scientific evidence. This last bullet is not because some idiots don't understand astronomy. I'm saying irrespective of whether they understand astronomy or not, as a Satyena Labhyas Tapasa Yesha Atma, on the path of Satya, to understand Atma, have a Atma Jnana, Samyak Jnanena Brahmacharyena Nityam. Our path should be of a Sanyam, of a Samyak knowledge, which is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Dhyana plus Dharana plus Samadhi equal to Sanyam. Okay, we have to look at if the evidence exists, we must test it. It doesn't matter what discipline, archaeology or non-archaeology, geology or non-geology, astronomy or non-astronomy. But the evidence should be available. You cannot talk of the evidence that doesn't exist. That is another stupidity. The people are stuck in absence of evidence equal to evidence of absence. But if the evidence exists, and I'm saying the evidence actually does exist from these different disciplines, archaeology, geology, hydrology, genetics, anthropology, climatology, paleontology, ornithology, ornithology, okay, that is the science of naming, linguistics, oceanography, sedimentology, genealogy, all of it validates and corroborates 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharata war. But more important, only 5561 BC. All right, that's 1 hour 30 minutes, guys. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I hope you are as excited as I am. I'll see you shortly in another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Namaskar.